The lights in the CID interrogation room flickered faintly, humming in the stale air as if responding to the tension that filled the space. Detective Rafiq sat across from the woman who had turned the entire department into a battlefield of theories and whispered speculation. Casey Reyes. 24 years old, quiet, charming, unreadable. Her reputation had arrived before she did, stories of contradictions, inconsistencies, secrets wrapped in smiles. But none of the files warned Rafiq about the unsettling aura she carried, or the strange calm she seemed to float in, even now, with suspicion tightening around her like a noose. He pushed a thick folder toward her. The sound echoed sharply in the room. Inside were photographs, scenes scorched by fire, a missing child report with a bright, hopeful picture, and Casey's own face printed beneath bold letters spelling person of interest. Rafiq waited to see a reaction. A twitch. A crack. Anything that would reveal the truth buried beneath that composed mask. But Casey only tilted her head, as if studying the contents for the first time. Her fingers gently brushed the metal table, long slow strokes that made Rafiq think she wasn't touching steel, but tracing invisible patterns on someone's skin. She looked up with eyes that held too many emotions and none at all. "People think I killed her," she said softly, almost conversationally, as though the topic were no heavier than discussing the weather. Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't strain. It floated, wrapping itself around the room, around him. Then she smiled, a small, unreadable curve of her lips that had no business appearing in the presence of tragedy. Rafiq leaned forward, trying to anchor himself in protocol. "I'm not interested in what people think," he said. "I want to know what actually happened." Casey's gaze sharpened, warming with something dangerously close to amusement. "Do you? Or do you want to know why I'm not afraid?" He kept his face still, but his heartbeat betrayed him. She noticed. "You're different," she murmured, leaning closer. The air shifted with her. "Every other detective looks at me like a verdict. You look at me like a question." Her nearness burned in a way that felt wrong, but irresistible. Rafiq tried to redirect the conversation, to regain control. "Where is she, Casey?" For a moment her smile faded, and something darker, colder, slid through her eyes. "If I told you," she whispered, "would you believe me?" Before he could answer, her fingers brushed the case file, gliding across the images as though they were part of a story she'd already accepted. "People don't want the truth, detective. They want a version they can sleep with." "And what version do you prefer?" Rafiq asked. She rested her elbows on the table, leaning in until their faces were close enough for him to see the tiny flecks of gold in her irises. "The one where you follow me," she said. "Not the evidence." Silence wrapped around them. Rafiq felt the ground beneath him shift, as though her words had pulled him toward an edge he hadn't realized he was standing on. The CID rules, the boundaries, the logic, everything blurred. The abandoned Navarro mansion stood like a wounded beast in the darkness, its broken windows reflecting the faint glow of the moon. CID vehicles formed a silent ring around the estate, engines off, weapons drawn. Detective Rafiq stepped carefully over shattered glass as he entered through the main hall, his heart pounding, because this was no ordinary raid. The Navarro twins were inside. Andre and Luca. Perfectly groomed heirs with perfectly crafted lies, now accused of the brutal double murder of their parents. Every detective expected a shootout. No one expected what actually happened. Inside, the mansion smelled of smoke, old perfume, and something metallic beneath it all, fear or blood. The marble floor was stained with footprints running in every direction, frantic but synchronized, as if two people shared the same pulse. Rafiq moved deeper, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He heard movement to the right, then to the left. The twins were fast. Clever. Raised on power and trained in manipulation. Their parents' empire had been built on secrets, ones the brothers inherited like a birthright. Suddenly, two shadows darted across the far hallway, gliding more than running, disappearing behind the broken archway of the dining room. Rafiq signaled to his team. They spread out silently. The air thickened. Then, from somewhere deeper inside, a harsh, mocking laugh echoed through the corridors. "Come on, CID," a voice sang out. "You made it all this way." Rafiq's stomach tightened. That voice belonged to Andre, calm, charismatic, always the one who smiled in mugshots. Luca was the storm, silent and explosive. Together they were unstoppable. Dangerous not because they were violent, but because they were loyal to each other beyond sanity. He pushed open the massive double doors to the ballroom. The chandeliers above were shattered, glittering shards covering the floor like frozen tears. And there they were, Andre and Luca Navarro, standing beneath the ruined lights, backs pressed together, guns in hand. They didn't look frightened. They looked unified. As if this entire raid was nothing more than a stage built for their final act. Andre grinned when he saw Rafiq. "Detective Khan," he said smoothly. "She said you'd be the one to find us." Rafiq froze. She. There was only one person they could mean. Casey. Before he could speak, Luca raised his gun slightly, not at the officers lining the walls, but upward. Andre mirrored him. Together, without a word exchanged, the brothers fired into the ceiling. The booming shots rained dust and crystal onto the floor. It was their signal. Their surrender. The entire CID unit hesitated, confused. No suspects ever surrendered this way, dramatically, deliberately. Andre dropped his weapon. Luca followed. Then Andre smiled that strange, calm smile again and said, "Tell Casey we kept our promise." Rafiq felt something cold settle in his chest. He didn't know what promise they meant, but instinct told him it was tied to the Black Ledger, to Casey's secrets, to the tangled web he was already trapped in. As the twins were handcuffed, they kept looking at each other, not at the officers. Their loyalty was haunting, almost beautiful in a twisted way. They whispered something Rafiq couldn't hear. Something meant only for brothers bound by blood and betrayal. The safe house was buried so deep beneath the abandoned textile mill that even the rats avoided it. Concrete walls swallowed sound, and the single hanging bulb cast a sickly yellow glow over the room, creating long shadows that trembled with every flicker. Detective Rafiq stepped inside slowly, gun drawn, breath steady but pulse racing. He had chased dozens of criminals in his career, but none had ever twisted his instincts the way Casey Reyes did. She had a talent for turning fear into fascination, guilt into intimacy, and truth into something sharp enough to cut. Casey stood at the far table, her silhouette calm against the dim light. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was waiting, a fact that both relieved and terrified him. Her back was to him, and her fingers rested gently on a thick black leather book. The ledger. The one CID had spent months trying to find. "You made it," she said quietly, without turning. Her voice drifted across the room like silk being pulled apart. "I wondered if you would." Rafiq tightened his grip on his gun. "Step away from the table, Casey." She finally turned, her eyes shimmering with something unreadable. Not fear. Not guilt. Something far more dangerous, expectation. Pointing a gun at me again, she said softly. You do that even when you don't want to. He tried not to let her words get to him, but she always knew exactly where to aim. Open the ledger. I was hoping you'd ask, she whispered, sliding it toward him with one fingertip. The leather creaked like old bones. When he flipped it open, his breath stilled. Names. Dozens of them. Some crossed out. Some written in red. And each page told the same story: alliances, betrayals, bribes, blackmail. Secrets that could burn the city down. Casey watched him closely. Everything you're looking for is in that book. And everything you've done, he said. Her smile flickered, small and wistful. Everything we have done. Rafiq shut the ledger with a hard thud. Don't twist this. You're already twisted, she said gently. Twisted around me. He stepped back, swallowing the heat rising in his chest. You manipulated everyone. The Navarro twins. Witnesses. Officers. Me. Casey moved to him slowly, each step soft but deliberate, as if approaching a wounded animal. I never manipulated you, she murmured. I just told you the truth in a way you could feel. Outside, faint sirens wailed in the distance, CID closing in. Rafiq's throat tightened. This was his last chance to arrest her. His last chance to step out of her orbit. But she reached out and touched his wrist, just 2 fingers, barely there. Still, the contact shot through him like electricity. You can take me in, she said, her voice trembling with something like vulnerability, and they'll bury me alive. Or you can stay. With me. Choose the version of us you believe in. The doorknob rattled upstairs. CID had breached the first level. Rafiq's chest rose and fell with the weight of a choice he never imagined he'd have to make. Duty or desire? Light or shadow? Law or the woman who had rewritten the rules of his world? Casey held her breath, waiting. The footsteps above grew louder. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Rafiq closed his eyes just long enough to feel everything she had become to him. Then he opened them, no longer the same man who entered the room.